This is a Danny Sun radio show, and on my next guest now, we have a familiar face right in front of me. You can't see my next guest because obviously you listen to the radio, but I can. The power of Zoom. We have Michael Underwood, familiar face you may know from TV Land, but we're kind of going to go on to what you're doing at present in the interview. Great to have you on the show today, and I just want to say welcome. And was working with children one career path you always wanted to pursue?
Well, do you know what? It's interesting. When I went to university, that's when I got my teaching degree. So that's when it all started. So long before television, I didn't grow up wanting to be a TV presenter. I sort of fell into that job, to be fair. So I came out of uni with a teaching degree, then went into children's television. So it seemed that I was destined to be working with children in the big part of my career. And those 20 years in television were brilliant. And I think actually, now that I've been 3 years in teaching now, and I think my time in television working with children has really helped. I think helped the way I present in lessons, the way I talk to the children, the way I sort of get children, understand them. And I think that's really benefited everything. And I absolutely love it. It's such a rewarding career being a teacher. And I know, it sounds like, oh, that's just something you'd say, but it absolutely is. And I've loved every second of it so far.
That's amazing, and it's good that you've had highlights in your life, something to tell the grandkids if the time does come for
Right.
that. And on the next question, obviously you had a background working with CBBC. Not many people know that you have a degree in education, teaching, and you're also a parent.
That's right. Yes, I have two of my own children. So, I mean, during lockdown, Danny, this was the thing. There was a lot going on because it was a very unusual situation. I was seeing it as a parent and a teacher. So I was at home learning with my two, but then also having to provide online teaching for the boys in my class. So there was so much to sort of deal with. So I totally understand why this report that we did with White Rose Maths came out. It was so good to see, well, actually, you know what? Yes, parents did find it tricky, and I totally understood why. It is a really tricky thing when you're sat there with your children, because at the end of the day, it's not 1 week of homework, a bit of homework. You were there for months, basically being a teacher for your children.
Yeah, right. Let's go on to today's topic then. And you took a kind of say backseat from the public eye, so you made it as a teacher, as a career now. Today's talking point: kids' homework and the roles parents have to play. Do you think parents are struggling to find the time and do have difficulty helping their children with their homework at the moment?
You know what? It's interesting. I think if we go back to lockdown for a moment. So with lockdown, yes, I think there were a lot of parents struggling with time because there were working parents who perhaps were working from home. There were parents who were just at home who were suddenly having to deal with having their children in the house for 7 hours a day when they were normally at school. So yeah, absolutely. And of course, life gets in the way as well. There's so many other things that need to happen. And it is difficult to find that time. It absolutely is. And that adds extra pressure and extra stress. I think that's what we saw in this report, was that parents were really struggling. And, I can understand where that difficulty comes from, because maths today is very different to the maths that I was taught and the maths that my parents were taught. Maths, in itself remains the same, of course, but the methods and the vocabulary that you use changes. So, we're using things like number lines, for example. That's something that we talk about, partitioning. We have all these words, chunking, that we're using nowadays that you'll see when your 7 or 8-year-old brings their homework home and you're like, hang on a minute, what is partitioning? I have no idea. And of course you don't, because you weren't taught this. And that's what's so good about White Rose Maths, is that they have those free online resources for parents, and you can access them and you can fill in that bit of knowledge. And you know what? Do it with your children. I think sometimes parents feel a bit of embarrassment if they don't understand something that their child's brought home. But actually, you know what? Just embrace that. We're all learning all the time. And I'm like it with my children. I'll just simply say, you know what? Let's check that. I'm not entirely sure. Why don't we work? Let's find it out together. And you sort of go on that path together. If you show discomfort and embarrassment in front of your children, they're going to pick up on that. But just embrace it and just be comfortable to say, you know what? Let's go to that White Rose Maths site. Let's take a look. Let's have a look at place value. Let's go and download that bit on fractions. And let's look at it together. And I think that's really good. And I'd love parents to be able to sort of know about these places so they can go and get that resource.
Very constructive advice there. Thanks for that. And we've got a few stats from the report you mentioned. 9% said they often end up doing their children's homework for them, the 9% being parents. And then the average parent spends 1 hour, 23 minutes circa helping their children with homework, with just over 4 attempts, so over 40% saying their child wants to get it out the way.
Well, I mean, I think we can both agree, can't we, that homework, sadly, has, I always say it needs rebranding, that word. It has a negative connotation, doesn't it? If children hear the term homework, they're going to be like, oh, homework, And I think it's sort of trying to change that. I mean, for example, when I'm teaching in class and I don't use the word test or exam, because those words, like homework, have a negative connotation. So if I know I'm going to do a test or an exam with my class, I would say, right, today you're going to impress me by showing me how much you know about fractions. So everybody ready? It's like that. Sometimes it's just about changing perspective a little bit and sort of tackling it in a slightly different way. And I think with homework, you can do that as well. Break it down, make it manageable. Like the report said, parents are spending well over an hour with their children. Well, that is intense in any time. That's a lot of time, especially if you're talking about primary school age. So break it into manageable chunks. Maybe do 15, 20 minutes at a time, then let them go running around in the garden or do some drawing or maybe even a little bit of screen time, and then bring them back. Homework on a Friday, try and spread it out. I've done this. I've done the Sunday night last minute rush. Come on, let's get this maths done on Sunday night, and it is stressful, because life does get in the way. But if you can just make that time, make those moments in a weekend, for example, then you can spread it out. And I think children much prefer to do it in smaller chunks rather than some intimidating hour and a half that faces them.
Of course, rather than trying to get it out of the way, kind of schedule the coursework throughout, like say, over the weekend.
Well, just a couple, just like, even if it's 20 minutes in the morning, maybe 20 minutes in the afternoon, and it's something like that. If you do that on a Saturday and the same on a Sunday, you've more than covered enough time that you should be spending on a topic like maths.
Cool. And subjects parents find the most difficult include, as you say, mathematics, maths, up there, 55%, followed by physics and English. And the subject art finished last. Do you think art is... the reason why it finished last is because it's kind of more creative and fun and kind of less taxing on the brain?
Well, you know what? The thing about maths in particular is it's very binary, isn't it? It's very black and white. It's right or it's wrong. And so that puts a lot of pressure on you to make sure you're getting it right. With something like art, for example, it's a lot more open. It's subjective. Not everyone is a Leonardo da Vinci, but everyone can put pen to paper. They can give their interpretation of something. They can get some paint and have fun, or whatever it is. You can all have a go, at least give it a go. And it's not quite so binary. Whereas with maths, of course, there's so much to take in, and those right or wrong, that sort of binary element of it is quite challenging, quite difficult. One thing that's quite interesting, I always think, is that, and I've done this when I was younger, I always thought, what is the point of doing these things in maths? I'm never going to need them. I'm never going to need to know this. But actually, what you've got to remember is with maths, it's not about the content. It's about the process, and it's about understanding those processes, and then you actually use them in adult life without even knowing it. Subconsciously, you're using them when you're reading a clock. You're saying 1:15. Well, you're already using your fractions. 1/4 past, 1/2 past, 1:45. You're using it without thinking about it. When you're reading a train timetable, you can do that because you learned those processes of looking at the 24-hour clock. Checking the change in your hand or in your pocket, looking at your bank statement, making a calculation of how much you can take away. You're doing all these things every day naturally. Even when you're putting petrol into your car, you're looking at the numbers flicking by, you're making a calculation. Okay, it costs that much per litre. I could probably get 10 litres in today. I don't want to spend too much. You're making these calculations subconsciously. And it's all because of those processes you learned as a child.
So when children get sent home to do coursework, they're doing it online now. Are the days of homework books, textbooks, and you used to put them in your back sack, are they kind of over now with moving with the times? Do you think the level of work has become less or more relatively the same?
Interesting. I mean, I think you touched on an interesting point there with technology, because we can't deny it. It's there, and it's going to be there, and it's going to increase. There's no doubt. And technology brings some fantastic opportunities for children and their learning. Of course, there are negative connotations. You don't want to overdo it. Like anything, too much screen time isn't going to be good for you. But used in the right way, it can be fantastic. And I think there's a lot of homework, maths included, that can be done online. There's lots of great apps that really help. But you know what? There's nothing like putting pen to paper, even with maths. Obviously, with English, that goes without saying. But with maths, even just understanding and seeing a method on paper, whether you're doing column method, whether you're doing these number lines, or even partitioning, you're doing these things and you're seeing it and it goes in. I mean, it's a proven fact that when you're writing down these methods, it's going into your long-term memory better.
Yeah.
And so, yes, of course, technology has a place, but we can still get pen to paper.
I feel much kind of confident in myself when I've got something written down on paper. When you put your calendar on your phone, your notes. If I've got it written on the paper, I know it's in there in black and white. I just feel more kind of confident. And which moves on to my next question. Coursework going online, has that alleviated the extra works teachers have had to do? The computer marking the coursework as opposed to the teacher doing it after hours from school.
Do you know what? There are positives to it. I wouldn't say it necessarily saves time. There is an element to it. It's environmentally more friendly. We're not churning out sheets of paper in homework folders and sending it home. That's definitely a good thing, without a doubt. I would say for me as a teacher, what I loved about using the technology, especially over lockdown, was that once you set the work, which did still take a lot of time, because I'd be recording videos or doing live lessons. But the marking side of it was brilliant, because with technology, I can leave little audio files. So you know what, if you're marking it by hand, you're ticking, well done, good work, check your spelling. But when I'm able to leave audio files, I was able to, for each child, it was almost giving them a little mini report. So I'd be like, child A, I'd be like, listen, fantastic maths work here. Just think about where you're positioning your numbers. Can you see how you haven't put them in the correct order? And you've just met, you can have a conversation with them. It's bizarre, but it was so much better. And I got feedback from parents who said having that audio feedback was brilliant, rather than just a tick box or a quick statement of great work. So, technology in that sense definitely works. Does it alleviate the amount of work we do? Probably not. But I think it's better for the children, which in turn is better for us.
Sure. And finally, when people say teachers just work, like 9 to 4, that's untrue, because as you're talking to me now, it does make you appreciate the jobs that teachers do. It's not just about teaching in the classroom, it's a preparation and behind the scenes as well. So I take my hat off to teachers, Yeah,
that's really kind of you. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, my day normally starts at 7 o'clock. So I'm in school at 7 a.m. and I'm leaving maybe just after 5. So it's a big old day. It's a good 10 hours. And the actual school day itself is really 8:30 to 4. So you are putting in that, you're putting in an extra hour and a half either side to make sure that you're ready for the next day and prepared. But you know what? The great thing for parents is that they get to be prepared as well now. Because with sites like White Rose Maths, they have that resource available. Most of it free as well, which is great. So you can just go straight there. If you feel like you need some extra knowledge or you want some support, you can go there. They've got maths professionals who've gone through this stuff with a fine-tooth comb. So it's great material and great resources, easy to download, and then you can be across it. You can support your child as if you were the teacher at home.
Thank you very much, Michael Underwood. Thank you for putting your side of what it's like to be a teacher, and some kind of myths as well that we kind of busted as well. That's okay. Great having you on the Danny Sun Show. All the best.
No worries. Thanks a lot, Danny. Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you.